Hello, and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News Channel. Just a reminder, if you want to join me on my live stream or get my crypto daily updates, there's two channels for that. They're both in the description and the comments, so please check those channels out. New channels, new content by me, and also I'm live streaming on the Good Free Photos channel, and that's on the description and comments as well. So actually, let's do some calculations for BAT. Now, all of these calculations are soft. We're going to see how much BAT could possibly be. We know that there's 1.5 billion BAT, and they said they can't actually make any more. We're going to assume that's true, and we're going to do something with like all the BAT in circulation, but of course we know that never is all of one cryptocurrency in circulation, and most of it's actually on hold and not actually available. So generally we're going to assume about 2/3 of it is actually on hold. So out of 1.5 billion total BAT, we're going to say like 500 million is actually out in circulation, can be traded at any time. The rest of it's in long-term hold, custody, and all that other stuff. That's generally true for almost any crypto. The entire supply is never available. So we're going to assume about 500 million is actually out at any time. But BAT actually has Brave browser actually has about 4 million people daily using it. We're going to assume for easier calculation, we're going to assume 25% actually turn on the paid ads and actually watch the paid ads. So that's about 1 million eyeballs a day, 1 million people a day actually look at the paid ads. We're going to assume that every person sees about 4 ads per day, because I think that's pretty good. Like, you surf about 3.5 hours and then you see ads, you see about 4 per day. So like that's 4 million ad impressions per day that Brave has. Now, looking on some other statistics, how much Google AdSense pays me, and how much more, like, because BAT's just a major advertiser, how much they're going to get paid. I'm going to say like they're going to have to pay their users, which is 70%, because that's what they say. They're going to pay their users about $10 per 1,000 impressions. So on 4 million impressions, that's about $40,000 per day. Now you multiply that by 30 days a month, and you get $1.2 million they have to pay out to users per month. So that's actually not a lot of money compared to 1.5 billion BAT in total supply. $1.2 million in terms of money probably roughly translates to about a little less than 10 million BAT given out each month. So despite the fact that they only have a couple hundred million, like 100 or 200 million BAT left, they can actually still give out the BAT in terms of like the number of users right now for many, many months without actually touching the supply. So if you're afraid that BAT's going to make more because they run out of supply right now because of user earning it, they're probably still several years away from actually running out of supply. But that's assuming the number of BAT users daily doesn't actually grow, which I think is a bad assumption. They are growing very, very fast. But I've also placed a figure of 25% of BAT users actually turning on the ads, and I don't think that ratio is nearly as high. So we're making a couple of assumptions that might balance each other out after a while, but they're going to be okay for at least another 2 years or so without actually expanding the supply. So the thing is, like, that's how much BAT they have left over. I think the circulating supply is like maybe 200-300 million less than the total supply. And given that they only have to give about 10 million per day, they can probably go on for about 2 or 3 years without actually running out of BAT and not printing more. Now, how much can BAT actually become? The entire advertising industry is roughly $240 billion. So, but you have to divide that per month because usually advertisers pay via month. So year is 12 months. You divide that by 12. So it's about $20 billion of online advertising per month. Now, let's just say in the future, Brave is successful, takes about 10% of that. So I think 10% market share. I mean, Google AdSense obviously has a much more than a 10% market share. And like Google and Facebook dominate like probably 70% of all advertising. But let's say Brave is very successful in the future, takes 10% of that. So they're at like $2 billion per month, right? And we know we have 1.5 billion BAT tokens per month. And plus, you have to remember, quarterly, at the end of quarters like March, June, September, and December, you will actually need more than that because at the end of each quarter, there are like big big affiliate companies, big advertising agencies that only pay quarterly. So there's going to be a burst at the end of each quarter. But monthly, there's going to be about $2 billion per month. And if you add in those quarterly payments, we can say like, okay, with those, like at those prime months, you have about $3 billion per month that you actually need to pay out to people. So let's actually just work with that. There's 1.5 billion BAT. If you just do that and you assume that all the BAT's out in circulation, which is not going to be true, you only need about $2 per BAT. But remember what we said. We said about 2/3 of the BAT's actually going to be held, and that's pretty consistent for a lot of big cryptos. Actually, like for most big cryptos, it's actually even more than 2/3, but we're just going to use 2/3. So like with only 500 million out, you need about $6 BAT to actually just pay, to actually just be able to pay all the internet advertisers. And that's with 10% of the industry. Obviously, with 100% of the industry, you're going to need $60 or more. And there's always like, and remember, you're going to need more than $6 per BAT, generally because that's the minimum amount needed, assuming that everything goes perfectly. You don't need to dip into your supply on those quarterlies. But of course, we know that the amount actually varies from month to month. So you want a buffer supply. So if you take over about 10% of the online advertising industry, I think you're going to need about $10 BAT to actually buffer up. And that's assuming that you only have 2/3 being held out. A lot of coins actually had about 80-85% held out. So it could actually be a lot higher. But 10% of the advertising industry is a lot to take over. And that's no small feat. Like you have to be maybe like 1/3 or 1/4 of Google AdSense. And that's assuming AdSense doesn't work with BAT, of course. If they work with BAT, that's a huge boon. But that's a big percentage to actually take over. You think 10% of an industry, I could do that. No. It's not that easy. It's really hard to take over 10% of an online advertising industry. So that's kind of like my calculations based on a $240 billion, this was 2018 reports, by the way, $240 billion internet advertising industry. That's about $20 billion a month, assuming that you have bursts at the end of every quarter and you need a buffer, even so you don't actually just run out. If BAT takes over about 10% of that industry, meaning that they have about $2 billion per month or $3 billion on those burst quarter months, that's how much they would actually need BAT to be to pay their people who are actually advertising for them. And that's how much commerce would actually transact. If BAT takes over more than 10%, or if they hook up with AdSense or Facebook or something, BAT will need to be significantly more expensive for that to actually work out. So that's kind of like how the calculations for BAT go. I would say like $10 a month is, not $10 BAT is, if you're looking at maybe like 5-7 years in the future or even more, that's kind of like a number you should actually be looking for. If you think BAT can actually, if you actually look at the industry that BAT's in, what they're trying to do, and like that would give you a very, very good rate of return, 50-60x. And I think BAT is a safer investment than most because they already have so much adoption and people are already collecting BAT. So maybe like $10 should be kind of like a goal for a very, very long-term future for BAT. So that's kind of like my projection on BAT. Let me know what you think. I'm basing these off of 2018 numbers. Obviously, internet advertising is scheduled to grow by a lot. So it could be significantly more than $10, maybe $15, $16. So let me know what you think, like and subscribe, and hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.